Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful October the 4th, 2019. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, we're dealing with a sports overdose going on down here in the South. I mean, you think about everything that can be played: high school football, college football, pro baseball, pro hockey. Charlton, I'm running out of things to say about sports right now.
Yeah, it's always time to run out. As long as you don't run out of ice, Big C, there's a lot of good people that love to have refreshments, and they want their refreshments cool. We like to have the cool. Well, fall season started, and it started with a bang. We have the playoffs in town for Major League Baseball, WNBA doing their thing, trying to sink the ball through the net. Sacramento Kings and also the Indiana Pacers. They're in India, Big C, 22-hour flight to get over to India. A lot of things going there. And then, of course, we know football, high school, college, NFL, it's all fair and love and war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just tell them Charlton and Big C sent you as far as the feet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports, just download the app. You can get real sports talk worldwide. Big C Sports brought to you by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and we really appreciate you for all your sponsorship support. I want to give out the National Suicide Hotline. We know we talk about it all the time. Something you don't want to take for granted is 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255, because people need help. It's great for military veterans, but also regular civilians. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, it is very important that we keep reiterating about the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number. There are so many people in this country that are in need every day, people that are going through trying times emotionally and not thinking that they have an outlet or somebody to talk to. But the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there, Charlton, to speak with anonymity, to vet your problems.
Yeah.
And that's what people need more than anything else, is someone to listen to them, to understand what they're going through and not be judgmental. And that's what this number is for. We have so many horrific suicides that occur in this great nation daily.
Yeah, I know.
We're not talking about on a monthly basis. We're talking about on a daily basis. And that's something that we need to find a way to stem, Charlton. Everyone talks about how cancer is horrific in this country, which it is, Charlton, and around the world. But suicide can be prevented more than anything else, Charlton. Just if somebody has an outlet to understand the problems and some assistance of what they're going through.
There's a TV show called 911, and they really show behind the scenes of what happens. And oftentimes, people just need someone to talk to them, because when you're stressed out and not in your right mind, sometimes you do foolish things. I love that number, 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and you can get some help. And, I just want to get into Friday Night Lights. There's a lot of sports to cover, Big C. I know time flies when you're having a good time. But I also know that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to that billion-dollar industry. So we love bringing you Big C's Friday Night Lights and just letting the high school kids know they may not go into high school sports. They may not go on to pro sports, but oftentimes they have that Letterman's jacket because they did. And it was free to go to most of these schools, unless you're private schools. Number 1, Mater Dei, Santa Ana, California. And number 2, followed by St. John's of Bellflower, California. They're in the same league. Number 3, IMG Academy of Bradenton, Florida. And they are the dominant program in Florida. If you look at number 4, Duncanville, Texas. And they are also undefeated down in the great state of Texas. Big C, number 5 is St. Francis, Baltimore, Maryland. Ironically, in this top 5, in the last 2 years, Mater Dei's been back-to-back national champions. They're preseason ranked number 1 right now. In the last 2 years, they played St. John Basco, IMG Academy, Florida, St. Francis Academy of Baltimore. They played 3 of the top 4 teams in the country, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they got some finances from somewhere to get around the country. When you think about the schedule that they play nationally, Charlton, you don't have collegiate teams that do that much traveling throughout the season.
No, you don't, because money, I think, even if you have a private jet, I think the Sacramento Kings went over to India. Now, you know that teams have their own charters. There's some talk that they use Drake's airplane, but they don't have more money than Drake. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, to use Drake's plane, that's going to be a luxury. And Drake does that, as a tax write-off. Also, he gets to fly with the team and hang out with the players.
Yeah, he's making more noise than Jay-Z, Big C. Number 6, St. Thomas Aquinas, Florida. Number 7, St. Louis, Honolulu, Hawaii. Number 8, Lakeland out of Florida, followed by number 9, Gonzaga out of Washington, D.C. And Big C, do you think POTUS spends any time supporting high school sports, Big C?
Well, you're right now, Charles. He's trying to support himself. He's trying to figure out how to get the problems that he's put himself into through all these phone calls, Charlton. And he didn't realize that he wasn't running a private business where other people can look into what he's doing.
Yeah, they really can. And then they followed up national Big C's top 10, Katy High School out of Texas, one of the perennial powers down in the great state of Texas. And so we really appreciate Big C's Friday Night Lights. Love bringing it to you, all the high school kids out there. You're not getting paid. A lot of college kids are not getting paid legally yet, but we know that's also going to be coming sometime soon. I want to jump into last night's baseball because we have a lot of games coming up too, Big C. I know there's some talk about this kid down in Georgia, and St. Louis got the better of them last night. It was 7-6. They took a 1-0 lead. They outlasted Atlanta. But that kid, I think his name was Acuna, a lot of people are kind of bagging on him because he was trying to do a home run walk as opposed to running to get to second base. And that may have cost him the game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, everybody always wants to point to one play saying that's what cost the team the game. You got 9 innings of baseball that you have to look at. Everybody has an opportunity. Raul Acuna hit a fly ball, Charlton, early in the game. That if he'd have legged it out, most likely would have been a double. But he went into a home run trot because he thought that the ball would exit the park. And he was held at first base. Subsequently, the next batter up, Charlton hit a ball to the left side of the infield, which would have easily advanced him to third base, but he was held at second. So these are the things, when you look at a game, this is why they say you run out every play all the way. Even though Acuna came back and hit a home run in the 8th inning, Charlton, to bring the Braves within 1 of the Cardinals, they subsequently lost the game. But to put all of that on a 21-year-old, think about it, he's 21 years old. And yes, he's done this during the regular season, but this is what professional athletics have gotten to. It has gotten to a me-selfish situation. I don't care what sport you look at. Everybody is hot dogging it. You got people in every sport that is hot dogging it nowadays. And so until teams set a precedent that's going to be universal from the time that they play the entire season, Charlton, from the start of the season, is that this is what's going to have to be, is that you're going to have to hustle out every play, otherwise you're going to be fine. So you can't come second hand to a player and say, this is what's going on. No, you have to do it from the start of the season, lay down fines, and don't blame one player for the loss of the game. The pitchers gave up the 7 runs, not the batter.
That's true, and that's a very good point. Everybody, every now and then, you make a mistake, but just keep playing hard. And I appreciate the young man for saying, I'm human. I'm going to make up for it. And when you think of making up for it, I think the Dodgers did great by starting, Kershaw, let them wait for game 2. Last night they get an incredible 6-0 win over the Washington Nationals that looked a little bit sluggish, maybe some jet lag, who knows. But I think so far, when you talk about players, and I know the Dodgers are loaded, their bats are heavy, it seems, but this kid by the name of Max Muncy, I remember he took Madison Bumgarner yard, and Madison gave him the business, said, hey, just run around the base. And Muncy said, you don't want me hitting home runs, don't throw bad pitches. And he did the same thing last night, and he really opened it up by getting a solid double when the Dodgers really needed to increase the score. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Dodgers took advantage of this situation that they were in last night, Charlton. They just dominated the Nationals. I think the Nationals was a little road weary, taking that flight out there. But when we think about what the Dodgers have done at Chavez Ravine, being able to get a shutout last night, that meant that their pitching was on. They gave up 2 hits in the game. the Nationals are going to have to find a way to get beyond that. I mean, they're putting Strasburg on the mound tonight against Kershaw.
Yep.
And they're going to see if he has anything left. He had the better regular season. He was just under 300 strikeouts for the season, Charles.
Yeah.
Will he have some of that firepower on the mound tonight versus the Dodgers? And they've been, with 106 wins on the regular season, they've been coasting.
No, they have been coasting, Big C. Now we look at what's going on down in Texas. It's amazing how you can talk about the playoff game to get in, and obviously the Rays had a nice win over the Oakland A's, and it's just a shame that the season's over for Oakland, but be that as it may. When you go up against the Houston Astros, you're up against a different breed of cat, Big C. It started as a pitching duel, but it did not end up that way. Houston Astros, they take a 2-1 lead in the American League Division Series. They beat the Rays 6-2, and Verlander pitched 8 strong innings. The Astros, Altuve is amazing. A 2-run home run in the 5th to break a scoreless tie. But more than that, they don't even seem like they were hitting stride yet, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that's just totally dangerous, Charlton. You talk about the depth of their roster. There is no weakness. There's no shortcomings. I mean, yes, Altuve hit it out and broke the scoreless tie in the game, but it was followed up, Charlton, by a lot more hitting from the Astros. And when you think about the solid pitching from Verlander going out there, the Astros just gave up 2 runs last night. It seemed like a total mismatch as you went on. I mean, as you said, the game started out even. But the Astros at home with that ravenous crowd down there in Minute Maid Park in Houston, Charlton, I don't see how they can expect to keep up with them. I knew that the Rays would have their hands full with the Astros because they've been, prior to the postseason, they were favored even above the Yankees to get to the World Series.
Yeah, well, it's always amazing when you watch teams, and it's anybody's game. So it's going to be a tough out, Houston, no matter how well anybody else plays. But you always have a chance if you can swing the bat, and the Rays have that chance. Minnesota at New York, game already underway. Barrios versus Paxton. And I look at these two teams, whether it's pitching or whether it's just atmosphere. Minnesota's a great market for baseball when they win. Yankees a great market for baseball, win or lose. But the Twins versus the Yankees tonight, Big C, with 613 home runs hit between these two teams during the regular season, who's going to win the home run derby tonight? Because these guys, they don't know that they're in the playoff game. They think they're still in the home run derby, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at these two teams, Charlton, you're talking about the long ball being in play at the park tonight in New York. The Yankees, they were second in the major leagues in home runs. The Twins were first. And so this is a game because the wind is going to be a little chilly up there in New York tonight. They had some rain there last night. So the ball might be a little tougher to carry out. But this is one, if you leave it up in the strike zone, Charlton, it will be like the home run derby that you see at the All-Star break.
They need a lot of ice because a lot of good old boys. I don't know if they put libations on ice, but I know sometimes it keeps it cool. They like to keep it cool, Big C. So congratulations to the world of baseball. That's Big C's thoughts on Major League Baseball. And it's all about the chase for the World Series. What we're going to do now is get into the college football. We've already covered Big C's Friday Night Lights. We're going to get into some talk on some college football because I know a lot of people really care about it. But before we start with the primary schools, I just want to get into some of the rankings out there with the HBCs, Historical Black Colleges, and his Big C's thoughts. North Carolina A&T number 1, followed by number 2 Bethune-Cookman, number 3 Alcorn State, followed by number 4 Florida A&M, number 5 South Carolina State. You know how we talk about getting exposure for these programs, Big C. We want to do our part, making sure that people know about the top-ranked programs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it is always important, Charlton, to talk about the historical black college football programs out there because so many of the great athletes that have played in the NFL and that have gone on to be inducted into the Hall of Fame have played at these historical black colleges. And you look at the young athletes that still participate in those programs today. Even though they don't get the national television recognition, Charlton, because they are of the lower division school now, they're still going out there playing their hearts out every weekend, just like everybody you see on television.
They really are. Number 6, Southern University. Number 7, Prairie View A&M. Number 8, Alabama State, followed by number 9, Arkansas Pine Bluff. And then number 10, Alabama A&M. It's amazing how you think about these great programs. Also Hampton, as well as North Carolina Central, 2 other HBC programs that are out there. trying to make noise in the world of college football. And we know it's just a matter of time before people start paying more attention. But we want to make sure that Big C Sports, we do our part on the national level, bringing attention to those games. Big C, I want to jump into college football and then get in some NFL, and we'll finish with some other sports as well. Some games going on tonight. We have number 19, Central Florida. They're 4-1 at Cincinnati. It's on ESPN, already underway. Artificial turf. And Central Florida's favored by about 4 points. Big C, your thoughts on that team?
Well, Central Florida, Charlton, this is a team that has scored at least 30 points in their last 31 games. They're an offensive juggernaut. Even though they lost 2 weeks ago to Pittsburgh in a resounding loss. I mean, Pittsburgh came up with some gadget plays at the end of the game. The following week, they just exploded on their next opponent, scoring over 50. I see Central Florida making easy digs tonight of this game.
Yeah, and also on Friday night, Lights College Football, New Mexico, 2-2 is at San Jose State, and they're also 2-2 on the season on Comcast Sportsnet Bay Area. It's a 10 o'clock p.m. kickoff East Coast time, Big C, and it's on artificial surface. Big C, on Saturday's big games. We'll get right into it. Big C's thoughts. Number 4, Oklahoma. They're 4-0. They're at Kansas, 2-3. It's an ABC game, ABC Sports artificial surface. And the Sooners are favored by only 34 points, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Kansas was out his top player. Their running back walked off the program, Charlton. Jalen Hurts is playing at an all-star caliber clip. He's the number 1 candidate for the Heisman Trophy right now. And I don't see any way that Kansas can slow down the Sooners.
Not at all, Big C. Boomer Schooner, Big C. This is a game that's a trap game. I know people might say trap doesn't make any sense. But I've seen this team challenge people. Is Utah State. I'm not saying they're going to even hang within 3 touchdowns of LSU. They're 3-1 on the season. They're at number 6 LSU, which is 4-0. It's a noontime kickoff on the SEC network. It's a grass surface. Now, LSU's only favored by 17 points. Now, people think, well, that's a lot. But Utah State usually doesn't even go anywhere near the state of Louisiana. But they're within 3 touchdowns. It might be that they'll beat the spread. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this game is going to feature 2 outstanding quarterbacks. Everyone has known what Joe Burrow has done this year for LSU. Yeah. But Jordan Love at Utah State, Charlton, has been a giant killer over the last 2 years out there in the Mountain West Conference. He's one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the country. Everyone in the NFL, he's on their radar. So this should be a very exciting game. LSU has too much firepower in the end for Utah State. Yeah. But this game will be closer than the 17.
Yeah, they're going to get their money. Purdue 1-3 at number 11, Penn State 4-0. Kent State 2-2 at number 9, Wisconsin 4-0. The big game is number 14, Iowa. They're undefeated 4-0 at number 18, Michigan 3-1. It's on Fox Sports noontime kickoff, artificial surface, and Michigan's favored by 2.5, Big C. I'm not so sure because they just haven't shown me that they're hungry this year. Your thoughts?
Well, Michigan is a team, in name only. They lack the talent. I look at Iowa in this game, Charlton, to be the more dominant team. And if Jim Harbaugh loses this game, Charlton, the clock will start ticking on how long he stays in Michigan.
It may start ticking like a fake Rolex, Big C. Another good game coming up on Saturday, number 25, Oklahoma State, which doesn't get much respect for how good they can be. They're 4-1. They're at Texas Tech, which is 2-2 on Fox Sports 1. And it's a noontime game, artificial surface. And Oklahoma State is favored by 10. And Texas Tech can throw the ball, but they're also banged up, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they've been banged up. They lost their starting quarterback who was going to be out for a month. When I look at Oklahoma State and Chuba Hubbard, the nation's leading rusher, who is averaging close to 200 yards a game, Charlton, after the first month of the season in college football, then I look at the freshman quarterback that they have. There's too much firepower under Mike Gundy's offense at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, they're very loaded. Maryland 2-2 at Rutgers 1-3. Maybe they'll crack the 50-point again. And then another game that's kind of under the radar. TCU 3-1 at Iowa State 2-2. It's ESPN2 noontime kickoff on grass surface. And you have Iowa State is favored by just about 1.5. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Iowa State has been somewhat disappointing this year. There was a lot of big things expected from them in the Big 12 conference, and they just haven't delivered. TCU came off a tough loss last week against crosstown rival SMU, who is 4-0 for the first time in about a decade.
Yeah, about a decade for them. Another big game coming up And I know a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen. Who's going to finally knock off Alabama in the SEC? Well, Alabama and Clemson, they're idle this weekend, Big C. But the biggest game of the week, my opinion, number 7, Auburn. They're 5-0. They're on the road at number 8, Florida. Florida's also an undefeated team. It's a 3:30 time kickoff on CBS Sports. They're playing on the grass surface. And Auburn's favored by 5 in the Swamp. I don't know if I'm buying that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, neither one of these teams know anything about the other team, Charleston. These two universities have not played each other since 2007.
Yeah.
So it's not that they have familiarity with each other's roster. This game is going to come down between coaching. I mean, when you look at where Auburn is, they've played a much better schedule than, a record than anybody has expected. They've gone in and beaten everybody that's challenged. They opened up the season knocking off Oregon.
Yep.
They had a big win a couple of weeks ago against Texas A&M. So they've risen to all the occasions. We know that both teams are having first-year starters at quarterback.
Yeah.
Nix at Auburn, Finks at Florida.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to give them the advantage of being down there in the Swamp. Both teams have outstanding defensive lines, and I think that's going to be the difference maker in the game is who's getting the most pressure on the opposing quarterback.
Another big game, especially when you think about Big Ten football. Illinois is 2-2. They're at Minnesota 4-0. They're undefeated under everybody's radar. It's a 3:30 kickoff on the Big Ten Network. Artificial surface. And them good old boys, the Gophers are favored by 13.5. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Lovie Smith is buying time at Illinois. This program hasn't been able to turn around up there, Charlton. There's just something up there in Champaign. When you look at Minnesota, this team has risen from the ashes there in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
they're playing outstanding football and being undefeated at this point in the season. I like Minnesota.
Yeah, I like them too, Big C. Here's another game that I think is going to make noise, at least on the West Coast. You look at Arizona under Sumlin. They're 3-1, Big C. They're at Colorado, also 3-1. This is in the Pac-12 South. It's a 4:30 kickoff actually on the Pac-12 network on artificial surface. And Colorado's actually favored by 2. But that Arizona team, they can put up points, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's when Khalil Tate is healthy. He missed last week's game. I'm not sure whether he's going to be back this week, Charlton. But, when you get down there in the desert and the heat, anything can go. There's been a lot of great expectations in Arizona under Kevin Sumlin.
Yeah.
They had a tough year last year, and they've gotten off to a decent start this year, even though they lost that opening game to Hawaii.
Yeah, that was right down on the goal line, too. Another game as we go back down south, number 3, Georgia, 4-0. They're at Tennessee, 1-3, disappointing. It's 7 o'clock kickoff, ESPN, East Coast time. Georgia's favored by 24.5 points. I think they may beat that spread, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Tennessee is holding their breath and hoping that they don't go too much more above that. So.
Yeah, that's true. A couple of more games for Big C's college football. And I think the team that I like is Ohio State. You have number 23, Michigan State. They're 4-1 on the season. The only loss was the Pac-12 contender, Arizona State. That was in East Lansing. They're on the road at number 5, Ohio State, also 5-0. That team is amazing. There's a 7:30 kickoff on ABC Sports, artificial surface. And when you think about the spread, Ohio State's favored by 22 points against Michigan State. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, in my thoughts, I think Ohio State is the best team in the country, Charlton, led by Justin Fields, a sophomore transfer from the University of Georgia. They have an outstanding running back in A.J. Dobbins. They may have the best defensive lineman, defensive rush in the country, and Young, number 2. So this is a team that's there.
Yeah.
And Michigan State is going to have their hands full.
Yeah, it's going to be a dynamic game, Big C, but I still like what Ohio State can do. I'm going to bring a couple of more games kind of under the radar again. You have number 15, Boise State. They're 3-1, and they're at 1-3 UNLV. And I'm only bringing this game up because down there in Las Vegas, anything can happen, especially when you get out there. I don't think the kids stay off the strip, but it's still a place of distraction. It's a 10:30 kickoff, East Coast time, artificial surface, and Boise's favored by 23.5. I think it's just about covering the spread. Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, Boise won't have any problem with UNLV. UNLV, there's talk of the coach being gone, even if not before the season is over. They just don't have the athletes down in the desert.
Yeah, they don't. A couple more I want to bring up because it's big for West Coast. Cal Berkeley 4-1. They're at number 13, Oregon, 3-1. We know Oregon and Auburn. Oregon had the lead with about 10 seconds left. With 9 seconds left, they were behind Big C. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff on Fox Sports. It's on artificial surface. It's in Austin Stadium, which is an amazing place to play. And Oregon's favored by 19 points over Cal Berkeley, which was undefeated prior to losing a close game to Arizona State. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Cal Berkeley is without their starting quarterback, and Oregon has never been consistent every year at home in games that they're supposed to just walk in, Charlton. Those have been the upset games. If you recall last year with Stanford, when they came into Stanford, was a huge underdog. They had the lead against Stanford. Stanford knocked them off, knocked them out of any championship contingent for the Pac-12.
Yeah, it can happen, Big C. They got to be on their P's and Q's. Final game, Big C's college football over the weekend. Number 16, Washington Huskies, just got a big win over USC. But now they're on the road at the Farm. Stanford is 2-3, been hurting earlier this season. It's a 10:30 kickoff East Coast time on ESPN on a grass surface. And Washington's favored by 8.5 points. I know that Stanford's been tough at times, but I think they're too banged up. And the spread might even be more than that. Your thoughts?
Well, they've been out without their starting quarterback, A.J. Costello, who's had a hand injury, Charlton. So they've struggled all year long, Charlton, and I don't see Stanford being able to stay in this game.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge for them on the Farm, Coach David Shaw. I want to bring into Big C's NFL football schedule. There's a lot going on in the sports universe, but we really like how, sometimes I'm against Thursday night games, but the Seattle Seahawks, in that crowd last night against the Los Angeles Rams, there's a defender that made an incredible interception, maybe as good as I've ever seen. I can't remember his name. I think it's Thompson, but I might be wrong. And he went down to the ground, and he kind of played pity-pat with the football. And even though you saw, and the crowd saw that it was an interception, it took about 5 minutes for a replay to figure out how do we get the Rams to have the same officials they had down in New Orleans, Big C. That was a great game by Seattle last night. But the kicker, White Wright, your thoughts?
Well, this was a game that you really have to look at Russell Wilson being in contention for the MVP in the NFL.
Amazing.
When you look at what he has done, Charlton, there's really no comparison to where he is. He was dropping dimes all over the field last night. He threw 4 touchdown passes against the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
Just an amazing, not the Seattle Seahawks, the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
He was all over the field. When you think about the command and the presence he had, I know everybody wants to think about when they had the Legion of Boom, but they still had Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
That's the one consistent that they have. And you think about Russell Wilson now, Charlton, in the NFL. He has 12 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions.
Yeah.
That leads the NFL through 5 games. 12 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions when you look at everybody else around the league.
Yeah.
He threw his 4th touchdown pass with 2:23 remaining to Parsons, the running back, Charlton, in the corner of the end zone.
Yeah.
So he was able to stay in command all night long against the Los Angeles Rams, who just struggled against him.
Yeah, and amazing, as you mentioned, that he threw that touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone to the running back that almost dropped it. He also had to bobble it. I guess they've been eating a lot of fish, and fish keeps your hands greasy, Big C. But what I noticed about that play is Talib had the coverage on the running back in the end zone because of Russell Wilson's ability. He was going to run toward the end zone, and that little boy was like, if you come up, I'm going to throw it. If you stay back, I'm going to run it. It was that move, that ability that made that pass play possible. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, what Russell Wilson has done since he's been in the NFL has been a consistent terror. He's not the flashy quarterback that everybody wants to put on mainstream. Russell Wilson has been a winner since his days at North Carolina State, Wisconsin, and then since he's been in the NFL. He's had 2 Super Bowl appearances. You can't get that from many other quarterbacks in the league. But when you look at this completion percentage this year, Charlton, completing 73% of his passes as an NFL quarterback and 12 touchdowns with no interceptions, there's no equal. We all think about Patrick Mahomes and his flashiness. Russell Wilson's first touchdown pass that he threw last night, that's the type of passes we were used to seeing from Patrick Mahomes. There was 6 inches of separation in that first touchdown pass to Lockett. And Russell Wilson on the night was 17 of 23 for 268 yards and 4 touchdowns. That was uncanny. You know, when he could do that without having any mistakes, Charlton, leading his team to victory.
You know, I want to get your thoughts on something that Pete Carroll did that I thought was really important and pivotal in them winning that game. When Zerline, who actually kicked the winning field goal to send the Rams to the Super Bowl down in New Orleans last year. You think about this. They had 2 timeouts left with 11 seconds on the clock. Most coaches would ice the quarterback, which I thought would be wrong because you give them time to get more composed and make sure they have the right formation. It also gives the special teams unit to figure out, who are they sending pressure from what side. Well, Pete Carroll did the opposite. He went against the grain, and he did this right as opposed to the beast mode not getting the ball on the 1-yard line against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. He did not ice the kicker. He kind of forced the hand of the Rams, who did not have timeouts, and they didn't have as much time to get composed, and he went wide right. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, the wind was blowing a little bit up in Seattle last night. I mean, in icing a kicker, this is what these guys do for a living.
Yeah.
Is kick footballs. And I've never believed in that theory. You call a timeout.
Right.
The guy is still, whether he's coming from the sidelines once or whether he's coming from it twice.
Yeah.
That's his only job, is to kick the field goal. And you think about Zerline, he had hit the 47-yarder early in the game.
Yeah.
So he was well within his reach, and I don't think he had missed a field goal under 50 yards in his last 30-plus kicks.
Yeah.
So this was an anagamy that he missed the field goal.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the Seattle Seahawks came out with the victory.
Yeah.
But even the key point early in the game where Pete Carroll blew a situation.
Yeah.
Where he had the ball 4th and 1, and he elected to go for a field goal that they missed.
Yeah.
So it just came back. Then it came back even for Seattle in that game.
Yeah, a couple of stats just to make sure. Russell Wilson, 17 of 23, 268 for touchdowns. Jared Goff, 29 of 49, 395 yards and a touchdown interception. Keep that in mind when they start talking about quarterbacks throwing for 4,000 yards. If you're behind, of course you're going to throw a lot. Touchdown and 1 pick. Running back stats, Chris Carson, 27 carries, 118 yards. Todd Gurley, 15 carries, 51 yards, 2 touchdowns. Big C, who's the premier running back? Is it Carson or is it Gurley? Because he almost doubled up in carries, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he doubled him up in carries. Gurley was able to push 2 TDs across the scoreboard.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing are the stats that you just named. When you talk about Jared Goff's stats, that he had 395 yards last night. If you look at Jared Goff's last 2 games, he has passed for 915 yards.
Yeah.
In his last 2 games, 915 yards.
Yeah.
But the other problem, Charlton, is he has 4 touchdown passes to go along with 4 interceptions and 2 losses in those games. So a lot of times when you look at yards that quarterbacks are amassing, it can be deceiving.
Yeah.
Whenever you think about a quarterback passing for 900 yards in 2 games, you expect to come out with victories. Unfortunately, the Rams have come out with consecutive losses, and now they've fallen, deep into their division hole.
Yeah, it's not always the yards that count, it's the points and how your defense plays. We're going to come up with what's called the Big C timeout. We're going to come back and go heavy on NFL football. I want Big C's thoughts on a lot of games coming up. We'll take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. Coming back and join us. You're going to love what we talk about in the second half. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And I really love bringing you Big C Sports. You can follow us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, worldwide on the #1 podcast network in the universe, an iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. You can follow Big C Sports on television with Xfinity Comcast. Just go to Big C Sports Comcast and Xfinity Network. You'll see that. But the apps that I really love is by Google, and everybody Googles nowadays, and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate our sponsors for all their support. Go tell a friend. Big C, we'll get right into it. Big C's NFL coming up on week 5. It's amazing. We're already in the 5th week, Big C. We have the Patriots. They are 4-0 at the Redskins 0-4. It's a Sunday 1 o'clock game, East Coast time on CBS Sports. And the Patriots are favored by 15 in an NFL game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's no wonder why the Patriots are favored by 15. When you look at the Washington Redskins, Charlton, they're going to be playing their 3rd quarterback of the season in just the 5th game of the season.
Wow.
Colt McCoy is going to get the start for the Washington Redskins. This is a team that has struggled to put points on the scoreboard. They're playing the New England Patriots. In the first 4 games, the first month of the NFL season, the New England Patriots gave up an abysmal 27 points. 27 points to 4 different professional teams combined. So when you look at the Washington Redskins going on their 3rd quarterback, it's going to be a struggle. And I look at this come Monday. I think Jay Gruden, the head coach of the Washington Redskins, will be without a job after this loss.
Well, it's amazing how sometimes it's the good old boy network. It's who you know and who you network with. The Bills 3-1 at the Titans 2-2. That game is Sunday, 1:00 p.m. kickoff Eastern Standard Time on CBS Sports. And the Titans are favored by 2.5 in that game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Bills are going to be without their starting quarterback, Josh Allen, who is still in concussion protocol. That means backup Matt Barkley will get the start, who did look sharp coming off the bench last week against New England, but threw that interception late in the game to seal the victory for New England. When you look at the Titans, they ran ruckshot of the Atlanta Falcons last week. Marcus Mariota threw 3 touchdown passes. Can he keep that hot hand against the Bills?
And the Bills have a huge asset in the great Frank Gore. Will Frank Gore never retire? Probably not, Big C. The Ravens 2-2 at the Steelers 1-3. This is a big matchup for both teams. Sunday, 1:00 kickoff East Coast time to CBS Sports. And the Ravens are favored by 3.5 at the Steelers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is a very critical game for the Baltimore Ravens. They've dropped 2 consecutive games, Charlton, and so they're reeling. The Pittsburgh Steelers, when you look at their quarterback, he didn't complete. His average completion was for 3 yards. I mean, the receivers ran after the catch, but his average catch was 3 yards down the field. When you look at that, Lamar Jackson has to be more efficient with the football. Mark Ingram needs to run it, but Mark Jackson needs to be more efficient in moving the ball down the field if the Ravens expect to come out of this game with a win.
Yeah, and you look at Jackson. He's been doing great using the skilled players, wide receiver Marquise Brown and tight end Mark Andrews. You look at the Jets, the New York Jets 0-3 at the Eagles 2-2. Both teams are a little bit disappointed so far. It's a Sunday game, 1 p.m. kickoff East Coast time on CBS Sports. And the Eagles are favored by 13.5. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the only chance that the Jets have in this game, Charlton, is that both teams are wearing green, and which green do the fans like the most. But the Eagles will just run ruckshot. Luke Falk will get his second start for the Jets this week. The Jets have no answers on offense or defense. The Eagles will score rapidly and often in this game, Charlton.
Yeah. How bad was that kiss that Darnold had? He's still suffering from mononucleosis. Be careful who you're kissing out there, especially when you're a millionaire, Big C. The Bears 3-1 at the Raiders 2-2. I guess they're trying to outdo the Sacramento Kings and the Indiana Pacers going over to London, but Indy is a further flight. Sunday in London, 1 p.m. East Coast time on Fox Sports. And the Bears are favored by 5.5 against the Raiders. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, both of these teams have something in common, Charlton. They both have quarterbacks that are wearing number 4. Carr for Raiders and McDaniels for the Bears. Khalil Mack will get a chance to get reacquainted with some old teammates this week over in London. When you think about the Raiders, they're coming off that miraculous win in Indianapolis on the road last week, Charlton, as well as with the Bears when they beat up on the Vikings. The Bears' defense, I think, might be just a little bit too much for that Raiders offense, and Chase Daniels is a solid backup quarterback now in a starting role for the Bears.
All eyes will be on the Bears. Khalil Mack, he'll face his former teammate, as you mentioned. And Khalil Mack going across, you know, he's get to face John Gruden and them good old boys that thought getting rid of him would help them win. And the funny thing is they brought in Vontaze Burfict to replace Khalil Mack, and Vontaze got himself suspended. It's amazing, Big C. The Vikings 2-2 at the Giants 2-2. Sunday, 1 o'clock kickoff East Coast time on Fox Sports. And the Vikings is favored by 5.5. If they didn't have Kirk Cousins, they might be favored by 6. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, we're going to find out if Daniel Jones is the truth playing against the Vikings defense, Charlton. He's had an easy path thus far playing against the Buccaneers defense. They gave up 40 last week against the Rams. And also Charlton playing against the Washington Redskins, who cannot score. Now he's going to be facing the Vikings, who have an outstanding defense. The Vikings' Achilles heel, though, is at their quarterback position. When I think about Dalvin Cook, who only had 10 carries last week after going into that game leading the NFL in rushing. And now you have 2 disgruntled wide receivers in Minnesota, in Diggs and Thielen. There's even some talk that Coach Zimmerman may not even play Diggs this week because of his criticism of your cousin in Minnesota.
You got my cousin. This is amazing. if he gets his first win over Cousins, who will they blame for that one, Big Z? Daniel Jones, it might happen. The Buccaneers 2-2 at the Saints 3-1 Sunday, 1:00 p.m. East Coast time on the great Fox Sports. And the Saints go marching in, favored by 4.5 points. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Buccaneers have been playing outstanding offense as of late. If you look at their last two games offensively, Charlton, they scored 86 points.
Yeah.
They should have won both of those if not for a couple of missed kicks against the New York Giants. When I look at the New Orleans Saints, they're playing outstanding defense also. Teddy Bridgewater has been what is advertised. He has done the job with Drew Brees sitting down. He's won 2 consecutive games.
Yep.
Can he keep that momentum with a third against the Buccaneers in a divisional game?
Isn't it amazing that the only game the Rams lost is the one that Drew Brees started? And it's amazing, but they're capable, and it just shows if you get guys in the system that are multidimensional, you have a chance of making things happen like what the great Russell Wilson did last night. They should already put a statue outside of a Century League field for the great Russell Wilson. The Buccaneers, you think about it, they're going into a team, and I'm telling you, there's something about the defense for the Buccaneers that you can't really look past them. They're playing a lot better than they have in the past. Got to make sure if you're the Saints, you keep you on your P's and Q's. The Falcons 1-3 at the Texans, Big C. They're 2-2 Sunday, 1:00 kickoff East Coast time on CBS Sports. And the Texans are favored by 4.5 points, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you got into this point, Game 5, Charlton, and you talk about a must-win game, that's the situation that the Atlanta Falcons in. We've seen Matt Ryan put up serious numbers yardage-wise, but he has not been able to push his team into the end zone, especially in that game last week against the Tennessee Titans. Now they're playing another AFC South team in the Texans. The Texans have had a couple of good games back-to-back. Deshaun Watson, his stride has gotten there.
Yeah.
The defense has picked up its efficiency in Houston. And you think about Deshaun Watson, he's getting a chance to see some players, Charlton, that he saw when he was in high school. When he was a high school kid growing up in Atlanta, he used to be a ball boy for the Atlanta Falcons during training camp, throwing to the receivers.
Wow. Let me get your thoughts on something, because I know you love defense. We think about J.J. Watt. I know he's always the perennial thought as maybe one of the league MVPs, at least on defense. But if you think about what's going on in football right now, the Buccaneers tend to have some guys that are just, sacking quarterbacks. It seems like every other series. Is Watt, has he been figured out? You know how you can figure out a quarterback sometimes? And there's no, Jadeveon Clowney's no longer there. And I know a lot of times Clowney took a lot of criticism for not being able to stop plays. But without Clowney there, Watt doesn't seem as valuable anymore, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he is. I mean, he's just like Aaron Donald in Los Angeles. You can't measure a player because he's not getting sacks.
Yeah.
You have to look at the disruptiveness that a defensive player does. And you still have to game plan for players like J.J. Watt and Aaron Donald. You look at Aaron Donald last night. There was an opportunity where he missed 3 different quarterback sacks that he possibly could have had in the game. J.J. Watt is the same way. He makes you go to the opposite side of the defense because he's going to hold the edge where he is.
Yeah.
So you have to game plan your offense a lot of times just to go away from J.J. Watt.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. The atmosphere, Week 5 marks the Founders' Day at NRG Stadium with the deceased owner, Bob McNair. He's inducted into the Texas Ring of Honor, so Houston could have a huge surge of emotion. Plus, looking at how well the Astros are playing in baseball, a great time to be a sports fan in Houston. The Cardinals from Arizona, 0-3-1, at the Bengals, 0-4. And you might see Kyler Murray get his first win. Sunday, 1:00 kickoff East Coast time on Fox Sports. Now, the Bengals are favored by 3.5 with the great Andy Dalton. But at some point in time, you got to break through with a win on the road, and Murray might be able to get enough against that defense. That's a very porous defense for Cincinnati, Big C. Your thoughts?
And the defense in Arizona is just as porous. Arizona will not win a game until head coach Cliff Kingsbury decides that he has to run the same offensive scheme with the Cardinals that Kyler Murray ran in college.
Yeah.
You have to run the ball. You have to run the offense from the line of scrimmage. You cannot put this young man in the huddle because that creates a disadvantage for him. His key in college was that he kept defenses tired, Charlton, because they couldn't substitute.
Right.
And so you have to run from the line of scrimmage. You have to go with no huddle if you want Kyler Murray to be effective in the NFL. And even as the Cincinnati Bengals are in this game,
yeah,
they've lost key players. They don't have their top 2 wideouts. Ross just went on the IL. A.J. Green has been on IL. All they have left is Joe Mix in the backfield. So it's going to be this game is a toss-up. It may end up in a tie.
Yeah, and that's amazing when you have a toss-up game with a rookie quarterback coming in against the great redhead and Dalton Big C. The Jaguars 2-2 at the Panthers 2-2. Ramsey's not going to be playing. You know, Cam Newton's out. So a lot of the marquee players offensively and defensively are not there. It's Sunday kickoff, 1 o'clock East Coast time on CBS Sports. And the Panthers are favored by 3.5. And the key for them, as people are realizing, McCaffrey's legit. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, both of these teams have two of the young, most electrifying backup quarterbacks playing in the NFL. When you think about Kyle Allen, since he's been inserted in the starter over the last 2 games for the Panthers, he's thrown 6 touchdowns in the last 2 games. So he has kick-started his offense. People have really found out that the Carolina Panthers do have receiving weapons in their arsenal. And then when you look at Gunnar Minshew down in Jacksonville, he has brought some spark to that offense that Blake Bortles hadn't brought over the past couple of years. You got a quarterback that can push the ball down the field at a 73% completion ratio. What that did, Charlton, was allow Leonard Fournette last week to have his best game as a pro in Jacksonville with 225 yards on 23 carries. And we know how great that defense is down in Jacksonville, led by Calais Campbell and the rookie Allen at defensive end. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on both of these teams. But, you know, I like Carolina because of what they're doing with Kyle Allen. He's been undaunted throwing the ball at quarterback.
Yeah, and when you think about it, too, for the Panthers on the defense, and I know you like defense, you think about it, they're 2-1 in games when Brian Burns has at least a half sack or more. So they got to get a lot of pressure on the young gunner from the great Washington State. Big C, it's amazing when you bring up the Denver Broncos because you think about a team that really has been, over the last, I would say, 2 decades, they've been the main team that came out of the AFC West. And they always had a way of rebuilding that team where there's a new quarterback or new running backs or receivers. Their defense has been legit over the years. But Elway gets no flack, obviously, and maybe he's earned his right not to be criticized by anyone outside of his own team. The Broncos 0-4, the Chargers 2-2. This game is Sunday, 4:05 p.m., kickoff East Coast time on CBS Sports. And the Chargers are favored by 6.5. At some point in time, the Broncos have to get a win. But it doesn't look like it may happen this weekend, Big C. But will there ever be a time that people put pressure on John Elway for being 0-5, your thoughts?
Well, Ozzie knew what he didn't have in Joe Flacco, and that made it easier for him to trade him to Denver, even though he had a Super Bowl win under his belt. He wasn't going to go the route of the New York Giants did with Eli Manning, hold on to a guy until you were running off fumes out of the tank. And so he shipped him off to Denver. And people thought because of what he had done in the past is he'd be able to rekindle that. He couldn't rekindle it in Baltimore anymore. And you look at the Broncos, 0-4, Charlton. They're looking at the 0-5 for the first time in franchise history with the Chargers coming to town. You think about what the Chargers and Phillip Rivers are doing. You got Keenan Allen, one of the top receivers in the NFL. You got Melvin Gordon coming back in the backfield, going to split time this weekend. So you got to have fresh legs running the ball. That defensive front of the Chargers is one of the best defensive fronts in all of pro football. The Broncos lost Nick Chubbs, or Bradley Chubbs last week, one of their defensive ends. So all they have now is Von Miller. That defensive line, the linebacking core has been depleted. I don't see the Broncos getting a win anytime soon, Charlton. This is a team that could go 0-7 or 0-8 at the start of the season.
That's amazing. You have defensive ends, Von Miller, and also Bradley Chubb. They have to cause a lot of problems for the quarterback for the Chargers. But this might be their opportunity. Melvin Gordon, he's coming back for this game. He's expected to make his 2019 debut. So he's missed 4 games for the Chargers. And that means he's fresh. If he doesn't miss a beat, you may see the Chargers make a run, but they're not going to make a run over Kansas City. But this is the team that can put themselves in solid contention for wild card. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is a team last year went on 11-game win streak, Charlton, and they challenged Kansas City down the stretch for the AFC West title. So the Chargers, now that they've gotten their roster back and they're healthy, they're going to make a run. Phillip Rivers can play football still in the NFL. They only had a problem at tight end, Charlton. They'll get that fixed with the wide receiving core that they have. So as I look at the Chargers, And you talked about Chubb. Chubb is out for the season with an knee injury. He suffered that last week in their loss. They don't have a chance, Charlton, because you can scheme for Von Miller. You can take him out of things because you go away from him offensively.
Do you think, it's about contracts and people wanting to be at certain places, and I'm sure Von Miller's wrapped up, but obviously it's going to take more than him. Flacco doesn't seem to be the answer for the Denver Broncos, so we'll see what happens with them. I want to go to another game that I think is real important because we saw these two teams in the playoffs last year with the great Andrew Luck, wasn't so lucky after all, just kind of got tired of the injuries and decided to walk away from the game because he decided that health was more important than getting cheered by 60,000 fans, and that's fine. But you have the Colts 2-2, Jacoby Brissett quarterback, at the Kansas City Chiefs that are 4-0. That's Sunday in 8:20 kickoff, East Coast time on NBC Sports. Now the Chiefs are favored by 10.5 points. We know they can score a lot of points, but there was a little chink in their armor last week against the Detroit Lions, which might be on par with the Colts, if not worse. Has someone figured out the Chiefs, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, nobody's figured out the Chiefs, Charlton. When you think about it, they're still scoring over 30 points a game, and I think that's the critical element that you have to look at in the NFL. You have a team that can score 30 points a game consistently week in and week out. You also have to look at the Colts. There were some kinks in their armor last week. They let the Raiders come into their house and kick the door in. That's what they did. They went up and down the field at ease against the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts had a problem last year in Kansas City in the playoffs, where they had nothing defensively against Mr. Mahomes and the rest of his weapons. The Chiefs may even get Tyreek Hill back, as if they did not have enough weapons offensively. The defense has played well. They kept them in check last week in Detroit. Detroit had some big plays. Patrick Mahomes did not throw a touchdown pass, and so that's what you have to look at when you're facing the Chiefs, is that you held Patrick Mahomes without throwing a touchdown pass, and you still give up 31 points.
Yeah, and Jacoby has to not have the turnover mistakes. It's obviously the Colts don't have enough on offense to keep pace with them, but I just know that if you're going off to a 4-0 start, the team that beats you may not be the team that's capable of beating you. It could be the team that you overlooked. That may have happened last week with the Colts falling to the Raiders at home. I want to go to I'm going to finish up the biggest game of the week last. I want to take you to the Monday night game, and then we'll come back to the Cowboys and Packers to close out on the NFL thoughts. You look at the Browns, Big C. They're 2-2 at the 49ers that are 3-0. You have Baker Mayfield, much ballyhooed, and you have Garoppolo, who came off that knee injury, who doesn't always make the right choices, it seems, not as accurate as people want him to be. But the defense for the 49ers, they can make it a 4-0 start for the Niners. If the Browns, which are capable, they still have a lot of talent, but something's missing. It's a Monday kickoff, and it's on ESPN. The 49ers favored by 3.5 at home, but that's not a lot of points against a team that plays shaky at times. Give me your thoughts on that game, Big C.
Well, this is a team, when you look at the Cleveland Browns, Charlton, they have to go through Nick Chubb. If without the Browns going through Nick Chubb, they're not going to beat anybody. I don't care what type of offensive firepower you talk about at wide receiver, quarterback. You have to be able to keep those linebackers and that safety close to the line of scrimmage, and that's what Nick Chubb's bring you with a solid running game. You saw that last week against the Ravens.
Yeah.
Because of Nick Chubb's running, they were able to run past the vaunted Ravens defense, and they had no answer for Jarvis Landry with his career best there in Cleveland, yardage-wise, in a game.
Yeah.
It's not all about the quarterback when you look at that. When you look at the 49ers, they have three outstanding running backs and a great tight end in Kittle.
Yeah.
They're banged up at the receiver position, but their defensive line have been stalwarts all year long, and that's what has gotten them over the humps. You know, you think about their offense just a couple of weeks ago against Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Had 5 turnovers, but the defense kept them in the game. They also won the game earlier in the year in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
So as all the quarterbacks want to be ballyhooed around the league, you got to look at what's getting you there. San Francisco and Cleveland have to go through the running game if they expect to win these games.
And we all know that, but let me get your thoughts. You know how people say if you got 2 minutes left in the game, down by 4, you want Aaron Rodgers. I think that's been, dispelled. I have another chance to make up for that coming up. But if you had a chance, and you've seen, you scouted quarterbacks over the years, which one would strike more fear If you're down by 4, 2 minutes left, who do you not want on the field? Does Garoppolo or Mayfield strike more fear, if any at all? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the quarterbacks that I would want, Charlton, be Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
I mean, neither one of these quarterbacks have been tested in those situations, Charlton, where they have to consistently come back. Yes, Garoppolo did it a week ago where he came back with 1:15 to go, Charlton, when they won the game against the Steelers 2 weeks ago. But, that was the first, bite at the apple that he had. We haven't seen Baker Mayfield do that enough because he's only in his second year in the NFL. So neither one of these quarterbacks are proven to that extent. If they get behind, they're going to struggle, either one of them.
Well, the game that a lot of people want to see is the Green Bay Packers. How about them Cowboys? 3-1, and that's at Jerry Jones' house. It's on Sunday, going back in time. A 4:25 kickoff, East Coast time on Fox Sports, and the Cowboys are favored by 3.5 at home. And you think about it, without having this moxie that he used to have, Aaron Rodgers, if he can go into Dallas and win, I remember they knocked Dallas out of the playoff. It was when they went undefeated, not undefeated, but I think they were 13-3, and Jerry Jones put in Tony Romo, who now will be calling his games, and not calling this game, but he's calling games. And that was a chance for the Cowboys at home to advance to at least the NFC Championship game. And I think the Cowboys remember that. That might be some added motivation if it exists. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think the motivation for both of these teams, Charlton, is because they're both coming off stinging losses last week. The Cowboys lost to the Saints, and we look at the loss that the Packers suffered, Charlton, at home.
Yep.
And so when I look at this game with Aaron Rodgers, here's a guy who last week set an NFL record, not the dubious record that you want. 4 straight incompletions from the 1-yard line.
Yeah.
But everybody's always said they want Aaron Rodgers with the ball in the last 2 minutes of the game. That solidified the loss for the Green Bay Packers.
Yep.
I think that the Packers need to incorporate Aaron Jones more into this offense. Devontae Adams may not play their top receiver who has a toe problem.
Yeah.
So that's going to create some problems in the arsenal for Aaron Rodgers. The defense showed vulnerability. They had been one of the top 2 defenses over the first 3 weeks of the season, but they showed vulnerability in that loss last week. The Dallas Cowboys could not muster up any offense against the New Orleans Saints. Ezekiel Elliott was held in check, one of his worst games of his NFL career. And he also fumbled the ball on a critical drive that would have put Dallas ahead in the game. You look at the tight end, Jason Witten. He also coughed up the ball, Charlton, after Dallas had gotten the first down. But all the blame went back to quarterback Dak Prescott, saying that he could not propel his team to victory, even though they had these offensive turnovers that stalled drives. The Dallas Cowboys defense is solid. When you look at what they've given up point-wise, they're in the top 5 in the NFL. So this will be a struggle for the Green Bay Packers in Jerry's world.
Yeah, how about some Cowboys? Prescott gets a chance to make an even bigger name by getting this win, and it might even be a double digits, just my opinion. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. You can follow Big C Sports on television with Xfinity Comcast Television. You can also follow my favorite apps, Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate our sponsors for all the support. We've covered Big C's Friday Night Lights. We've covered the HBC Historical Black College Football and trying to get those programs more publicity. Their fans spend money too. We covered Big C's Saturday Night Football with the Blue Blood conferences, the Power Fives. Also Big C's thoughts on NFL football we're looking forward to. We also are heavy into Major League Baseball as the playoffs get started, Big C. I want to close out today's show with, I know you want ice. You keep mentioning ice. Sometime if you're at a bar, you keep saying ice, and eventually they'll come over and put some ice in your cup, Big C. So we're going to get you some ice in the cup. Hopefully don't lay down on it. NHL schedule tonight. Toronto Maple Leafs at the Carolina Blue Jackets. Winnipeg Jets at the New Jersey Devils. The Washington Capitals at the New York Rangers. And the Las Vegas Golden Knights at the San Jose Sharks, Big C. If I'm a Knight, I don't want to be dumped into a Sharks take, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the Golden Knights and the San Jose Sharks, and you think about the Western Division playoffs last year, Charlton, These teams have developed quite a rivalry out there on the West Coast, and the Sharks only being in their third year in the NHL, Charlton. It's amazing how you can find somebody that you don't like right away on ice. Even though they've curtailed the fighting in the NHL and where they started suspending and fining players, Charlton, trying to clean up the game, this rivalry always breaks out in a couple of fights during every match.
Yeah, it's always good. It's always amazing. I want to close out today's show before I get Big C's thoughts on Back of the Day. It's a poet. It happened October 4th, and everybody wants to read poetry. There's something called Oscar Hunter's short story about 700 calendar days, which takes place during the Spanish Civil War of the 1930s. A wounded soldier explains why he volunteered for Abraham Lincoln's brigade, a real-life contingent with African Americans. He said he wanted to go to Ethiopia to fight Mussolini, and they said, "This ain't Ethiopia, but it will do." As the great poet Langston Hughes wrote in his Ballad of Ethiopia, "All you colored people, be a man at last. Say no to Mussolini. No, you shall not pass. You got to stand up for what's right. Even if you're afraid, it doesn't take you to be afraid, to have courage. Just do the right thing." I love what Langston Hughes wrote. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, "With all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble." Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Charlton, it's going to be a great weekend when you talk about the sports universe. When we talk about the ALS and the NLS series that are going on, we're going to come out of the weekend with some teams down 0-2 and looking to go home early after a 3-game series, Charlton. In the NFL, come Monday, we may have a head coach without a job.
Well, come Monday, I know we'll have some winning teams and the teams that lost, but you can win. You can win no matter what, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.